Are you a fan of the horror genre, or do you like scary movies? Be ready to watch one of the best horror movies from now, because this video is special for all horror movie fans, and in this video we're going to discuss all the terrifying movies of all time that you will love to watch. Let's start checking one by one. The first and best horror movie on our list is The Conjuring Part 3. It is also named The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It. The sequel to The Conjuring in 2013 and The Conjuring 2 in 2016, this is the third part, the most humble and one of the most supernatural horror films to watch. Filled with horror, murder, and unknown evil, its chilling story shocks even real-life supernatural investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. One of the most disturbing cases in their files begins with a fight for the soul of a young child, then they're taken beyond anything they've ever seen before, and for the first time in the history of the United States, a monstrous possession is claimed by a suspect as a defense. The film received a positive response from critics and also grossed over $202 million on a budget of $39 million at the box office. Let's come to the second best horror movie of all time, which is Us. Created and written by Jordan Peele, Us is the most terrifying and watchable horror movie ever. The film follows Adelaide Wilson and her family, who are attacked by a group of deadly doppelgangers. When Adelaide Wilson returns to her beach home where she grew up, she remembers a scarring experience in the past and worries that something bad is about to happen. Her worst fears soon come true when four masked strangers enter the house and force Wilson into a battle for survival. When the masks come off, the family is horrified to learn that each attacker takes the form of one of them. This horrible movie received praise for the screenplay and direction by Peele and also more positive reviews. As well as the film grossed over $255 million all over the world on a budget of $20 million at the box office. The third and best horror movie on our list is 2000's Ginger Snaps. Directed by John Fawcett, Ginger Snaps is one of the most anticipated supernatural horror movies. The film stars a talented cast including Emily Perkins, Catherine Isabelle, Chris Lemch, and Mimi Rogers. The story of this movie revolves around two outcast sisters, Ginger, played by Catherine Isabelle, and Bridget, played by Emily Perkins. They both live in the carefree suburb of Bailey Downs. On the night of Ginger's first period, she's brutally attacked by a wild animal. Ginger's wounds heal miraculously, but something seems to be wrong. Then Bridget saves her sister and herself from all of this. Ginger Snaps was a huge success in 2000 and also received more positive reviews from critics, as well as the film has grossed over $572 million on a budget of $4.5 million at the box office. Coming to the next terrifying movie, Scream, which is also known as Scream 5. This is one of the most awaited and watchable horror genre movies of all time. Created by Matt Bettinelli, Open, and Tyler Gillett, this scary movie is a direct sequel to Scream 4 in 2011. This movie is praised by critics for honoring Craven's legacy and received more positive responses from fans as well. It has grossed over $140 million and worldwide on a budget of $24 million at the box office. The story of the film revolves around horrific and shocking things in Woodsboro, California. 25 years after a brutal murder hit the quiet town of Woodsboro, a new killer wears the ghost face mask and targets a group of teenagers to unravel the mysteries of the city's deadly past. Most horrible to watch and quite interesting, Happy Death Day is 2017's one of the most anticipated slasher films, which is directed by Christopher Landon and written by Scott Lobdell. The film follows a college student who was murdered on her birthday night and is revived that day. At the same time, she sets out to find the killer and stop her death. The film was praised by critics for the excellent performance of Jessica Roth and received some good reviews from the fans and critics as well. This 2017 horror genre has grossed over $125.5 million all over the world on a budget of $4.8 million at the box office. Come to another slasher film, The Burning. The Burning is the most awaited horror movie ever in 1918. This horror genre was directed by Tony Maylam and starred some of the talented cast members like Brian Matthews, Leah Ayres, Brian Backer, and so on. Based on the New York urban legend of the Crosby Maniac, the movie marks the debut of Jason Alexander, Fishin Stevens, and Holly Hunter. The film follows the story of a summer camp in which some teenagers make a joke about the camp's caretaker, Crosby, played by Lou David. But the joke turns out to be very wrong and the teenagers run away after leaving Cropsey dead after being set on fire. But no one puts Cropsey down. After a few years, the burned and disfigured caretaker returns to the camp equipped with his faithful shears and prepares to take revenge on his entire brand for a whole new group of teenagers. The murderous Crosby then kills the campers one by one in the forest. This most watchable horror genre grossed over $707 million worldwide on a budget of $1.5 million at the box office. Let's come to the next greatest horror movie of all time, Inside. Inside is 2007's one of the most horror movies, directed by Julian Maury and Alexandra Bastillo. The film's story was written by the co-director Alexandra Bastillo and is the first feature film of this director. The plot of the film follows a young pregnant woman 4 months after her husband's death. A woman on the verge of motherhood is harassed by an unknown woman who wants her unborn baby to be born in her home. After watching this most horror and terrible movie, there definitely come thorns on the limbs. This movie generally received a more positive response and was praised by critics for its genuinely scary and brutally violent direction. Inside has grossed over $530 million all over the world on a budget of $2.5 million at the box office. Another best horror movie is They Look Like People. 2015's They Look Like People is one of the most glamorous and overlooked modern horror films. Directed and written by Perry Blackshear, the greatest horror genre won a special jury award at the Slam Dance Festival. In the film, a shy Christian in New York likes his boss, but he's afraid to take her out on a date. When he encounters his old friend Wyatt, who is passing through New York, Christian invites him to stay in his apartment. Wyatt suspects that the people around him are turning into evil creatures, so he questions whether he wants to save his only friend from the impending war or to save himself. This is a film where the threat and consequences of horrific violence caused by a constant on-edge environment become almost unbearable, also thanks to the very strong performance which made the film most successful. Another best horror movie on our list is Midsummer. This is one of the best and most watchable horror movies of all time. Midsummer is 2019's folk horror movie written and directed by Ari Aster. The film has received more positive feedback and is mostly praised by critics by Aster's direction and performance of Pew. The story of the film begins with a traumatic event and ends with a perverted sex scene, which is covered with crooked, revengeful, and horrible situations at the same time. It involves a couple visiting Sweden in their friend's village for a midsummer celebration, but what begins as a beautiful retreat develops into a rapidly growing violent and bizarre rivalry at the hands of a pagan sect. This most anticipated movie grossed over $48 million on a budget of $9 million at the box office. Let's come to the next horrible movie, A Quiet Place. 2018's A Quiet Place is the most terrifying and most anticipated movie ever. Created by John Krasinski, the movie received more good responses and reviews from critics. The story revolves around a father, Krasinski, and a mother, Emily Blunt, who struggle to survive and raise their children. The family should certainly live in peace to avoid the mysterious creatures that hunt by voice, knowing that even the slightest whisper or footsteps can bring death. Evelyn and Lee are determined to find a way to protect their children and fight back. This most scarring movie has grossed over $341 million worldwide at the box office on a budget of $17 million. Another greatest and most watchable horror movie is Demons. Created by Lamberto Baya, Demons is one of the most blockbuster horror films which follows the story of two female university students who, along with several random people, are given complimentary tickets for a screening of a mystery movie. Where they are soon confronted by a mob of violent monsters in a theater, this anticipated movie not only received good reviews from fans and critics, but also grossed over 1.225 million Italian lire at the box office. The next watchable and most horror movie of all time is 2008's The Strangers. Brian Bertino's directorial debut is one of the smaller scaled films on the list, but its simplicity is its greatest strength. Written and directed by Brian Bertino, the movie is the best and most iconic ever to watch. The plot of the film follows Liv Tyler in the role played by Kristen and Scott Speedman, played by James. In the film, the couple stays at the holiday home was interrupted by three masked criminals who broke into the house. The screenplay was inspired by two real-life events. The series of multiple Manson family Tate murders and break-ins that took place next to Bertino's as a child was very popular at the time. This low-budget movie is not only received more positive responses from fans and critics, but also earned over $82.4 million all over the world on the budget of $9 million at the box office. Let's move on to another best horror movie, Poltergeist. Poltergeist is 1982's most anticipated and supernatural horror film, directed by Tobe Hooper. This film focuses on a suburban family whose home is invaded by hateful demons who kidnap their daughter. When the ghosts interact with the family through a television set, they're initially friendly and playful. Then the spirits become unexpectedly dangerous, and when Carol Ann disappears, Steve and Diane turn to a parapsychologist and finally to an exorcist for help. This film has received more positive responses and huge success, also has grossed over $121 million at the box office on a budget of $10.7 million. The next greatest horror movie is 2015's The Witch. The Witch is not only horror but quite interesting from its first moments. Written and directed by Robert Eggers, The Witch is one of the period's supernatural horror films which follows a Puritan family who has to face evil forces in the jungle beyond their New England farm. In the film, in New England 1630, the farmer, his wife, and their children are overwhelmed with fear and despair when their youngest son Samuel suddenly disappears. The eldest daughter blames Thomason for seeing the boy at the time of the family's disappearance. As suspicions and paranoia grow, twin siblings and Jonah suspect Thomason of witchcraft and test the family's faith and loyalty and love for one another. The Witch has received more critical acclaim by critics as well as was a huge success at the box office. The film has grossed over $40.4 million worldwide on a low budget of $4 million. Another best but rewatchable horror movie of all time, Shutter Island, is 2010's amazing psychological horror thriller film directed by Martin Scorsese. Based on the Dennis Lehane's 2003 novel of the same name, Shutter Island is written by famous screenwriter and producer Leonardo DiCaprio. The film was famous for its soundtracks, which featured classical music by Gustav Mahler, as well as modern classical music by composers such as Christoph Krzysztof Penderecki, György Ligeti, John Cage, Ingram Marshall, and Max Richter. The film's plot unleashes an unimaginable escape of clever murderer, U.S. Marshal Teddy Daniels and his new partner led by Mark Ruffalo, in a castle-like insane asylum located on a remote window-swept island in Ashcliff Hospital. There, the woman appears to have disappeared from a locked room, and there are some signs of horrific acts committed on the hospital walls. As the investigation deepens, Teddy realizes that if he hopes to stay alive on the island, he will have to face his dark fears. Shutter Island has not only received more critical acclaim from critics, but also has earned $294.8 million all over the world on a budget of $80 million at the box office. Let's come to another horror film, The Mist, which is directed and written by Frank Darabont. Based on the 1980s horror novel named The Mist, this movie is one of the most watchable science fiction horror films. In this movie, based on the story of Stephen King, the violent storm that swept over the favorite King locale in Maine flows in huge fog. When the electric power goes out, Thomas Jane in the role of David Drayton and his young son Billy in the role of Nathan Gamble slowly walk into the town to pick up emergency supplies at the supermarket. The film has received more positive feedback and critical acclaim from fans and critics, as well as it has earned over $57.3 million all over the world on a budget of $18 million at the box office. The last in our list and most watchable horror movie is 2002's The Ring. Created by Gore Verbinski, The Ring is one of the most terrifying plus supernatural horror films and is the horror film Ring and is the most watchable and quite interesting ever. The film is a remake of 1998's Japanese horror film Ring by Hideo Nakata, and also it is based on Koji Suzuki's 1991 novel named The Ring. In the film, Naomi Watts portrays a journalist examining a cursed videotape that strikes a viewer 7 days after it is seen. The film shows the viewer's death will be predicted in 7 days due to the videotape filled with horrible pictures. Newspaper reporter Rachel Keller was skeptical of the story until 4 teenagers mysteriously died within a week of seeing the tape. Her curiosity about the investigation gets her better. Rachel then tracks the video and watches it, then she only has 7 days to unravel the mystery. That's all about the best horror movies of all time. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for more interesting videos. Thanks for watching.